Okay, so my deep dive has been sidelined yet again by a breaking story. So let's have a look at it.
The Heavenly Tour was definitely the exact opposite of that. It was the Hellish Tour, Corey's Hell Tour is really what it should have been called, but that was due to infiltration. We had literally infiltration on our last tour. We had people that were sent in that were spies that were not actually there to be musicians, but rather there to cause mayhem. And this was when I hired all the girls. So it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
So
They were
when was this?
This was on our last tour, the 2017 tour, when I had to shut it down amidst the tour. We had done like 80 shows. It was supposed to go international. But unfortunately, there were some people planted into the tour that were literally just there to cause problems. They were purposely singing off key, purposely playing wrong parts, doing stuff like that so that we would get negative attention, negative reviews, and then made all these terrible allegations after the tour ended, saying we didn't feed them and we didn't pay them and they didn't shower and just stupid stuff. But it went on, and that was a nightmare for us. Obviously, we had all kinds of stuff we had to deal with us with because of that. And it left a bad taste in my mouth, and especially given the fact that we were doing so well, there was so much success, there was so much positive energy. um I mean, the bus broke down 10 times. It happened to be Marilyn Manson's bus, and when I say happened to, I use that term lightly. It happened to be also Marilyn Manson's bus driver, and it also happened to be Marilyn Manson's girlfriend that was part of the band, or one of his girlfriends or whatever. So yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
Do you know who put the infiltrators up to it?
Well, if it smells like a horse and it looks like a horse, chances are it's a horse.
So you think it was Marilyn Manson? Because I know you had some pretty strong words about him. What was it, last year?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was the reason why, because we collected all the evidence and we found out everything that we found out, which was that, yes, he was heavily involved in trying to infiltrate that tour. I don't really know the reason. I can't tell you, other than the fact that we just know that he was behind the scenes of a lot of stuff.
Do you remember any of the evidence apart from what you've mentioned? It was the tour bus and his relationship with some of the people.
Right. I mean, like, basically, one day we're on the bus and the driver starts telling us this awful story, which I'm not going to repeat because I don't want to tell, tales out of school. But let's just say, the bus driver told us about this very abusive type behavior that he was exhibiting. And these girls were laughing and thought it was funny. And I was shocked by that. And then as a result, they kind of slipped up, and he was like, well, I've seen you on here before. And she's like, what do you mean I've seen you here before? And he's like, yeah, we saw you last summer. And she's like, oh, this is the same bus? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And that's when it kind of came out. So it wasn't just that, the physical evidence we found later that attached certain things to certain things, but they point blank said it right in front of us, pretty much.
How did those people get hired?
Through Facebook, unfortunately. See, I was very sloppy. We were kind of desperate at the time because we had announced the tour. We had a really good band, and then a couple of the band members fell out for one reason or another. They couldn't make it, and we had to scatter at the last minute to try and find new players. So I put out an open Facebook post and said we were doing an open casting call for, young females who were attractive, who could play multiple instruments, that were willing to wear this ridiculous costume on stage. Because, I mean, a lot of rock and roll girls don't really want to do that. But, look at, if you are willing to wear wings and a halo and dress like an angel, then, you can come audition. So we kind of left it open to anybody. And the other thing we did was open our house up to people and let them stay there if they needed. So we were the perfect patsy.
Do you think that the people who were responsible for this got what they wanted?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the tour shut down, but that was after the third tour. So we'd done 3 legs, and on the third leg, it wasn't necessarily because of them that it shut down. It was because of the fact that the Me Too movement had started, and there was all this pressure on me to name names, all this stuff. And that's when I actually decided to just kind of, freeze everything and, serve the higher good and make my documentary, because I felt that that was what needed to happen at that point. So sadly, it definitely, all kind of compounded, but they're not the reason the tour stopped, but they we're doing things like calling venues ahead of time and putting, let's say, very dark bands ahead of a pop group as the opener. So like one of the things that we're doing on this tour to make sure something like that doesn't happen is we're putting in the contract that we have to approve every opener and make sure that it's got, good pop sensibilities and, it's a normal rock band or pop band that's opening for us, as opposed to some crazy demonic thing, which was happening quite a lot on the Angelic tour, ironically.
Not to belabor the point, but I know you've had some pretty strong words about Marilyn Manson in the past. Have you been following some of the developments over the last couple of months and year?
I have, but it's really not something I want to get into. I don't want to start throwing around suspicion and allegations. All I can say is I have a lot of sympathy for any woman or any man or any child who's had to sacrifice their will or sacrifice their body because somebody else didn't respect them. The most important thing I think in this world is that we have our sanctity and our right to decision making in our own body and what happens to our body. And that is a very powerful, important thing that each human being should have the right to. And so I stand with all survivors.
There was a point where I believed some of the things that this guy had to say, but there was also a point where I had to stop and question it. And for me, that point was when Corey Haim's mum and sister came out against Feldman. They both knew who had abused Corey Haim, and it was they, not Hollywood, who was trying to stop Feldman from speaking on Haim's behalf. And on top of all of that, his own documentary revealed that he and Hames were not the besties that he claimed that they were.
Screw it. Here's why I'm pissed at Feldman. I mean, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. It's just he knew the whole time. I'm assuming I was in Lost Boys 2. It's already been aired. I'm not. So I had to produce that emotion about a half hour later, which I produced in the office off camera, and I just had to and it was a bad day for me, and until whatever ago, there was no Lost Boys 2 without me. So to me, that's just a backstab. So I have issues right now. Another guy in the world named Corey, that's all. You know how it is when you have an old brother. I'm just tired of him right now, man. It's cool. Is there a way I can reach through the camera and actually dig in? No, I'm kidding. MTV Live, bam! Corey, you opening up to the world about me having a knife in my pocket, and the reason I wear this, man, is like to cover up some scars I have, because like I used to cut into myself, because it's a way to feel. I hear, and like mentioning that, you just rip the envelope, man. I'll go you one better. You let me get around in my life, man, raped, so to speak, when I was about 14 and a half, and I'm saying this right now, by the guy you still hang out with, and tell me I'm 14 and a half, take responsibility. You know exactly what I'm talking about. What'd you do, man, when you saw that going down when I was 14 to me? What'd you do? You knew about it. Besides being his best friend, what'd you do? What'd you do? Tell us what you did, man.
I believe
Lines of cocaine with me. God bless you. I was awake, Corey. I was very aware what was going on with me. So I might take this to go.
Okay.
Would be the probably smartest thing to do.
You know what?
Corey,
you want to put all that shit on the table? You want about all
just
that?
Put you in the ground, kid.
Okay.
Really, it's not good. Me around you is detrimental for my health, man. You're really, 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 really up in your head, kid. And I really don't want to be your friend anymore. I can't. It's not that I don't want to be. I can't.
Well, that's where it's at.
I can't.
He was also getting some roles in films again, living with his mother Judy in North Hollywood, which is where she took these never-before-seen photos. her son caring for her while she battled cancer. And Corey Haim's mother, Judy, is with us here now. It's good to meet you, Judy.
Good to meet you.
I know that you have been battling cancer. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing okay, considering, yes, I'm doing fine. I'm hoping I'm in remission. I had my, I'm finished with all my treatments.
Good.
Yeah. Well, it's been very difficult, oh my God, to say the least, you know. I was diagnosed July, I think, 2009. And it was a shock. It was a shock. My daughter came down as well for my operation. My son was there, and then she had to go back to Toronto. Corey and I lived together. I lived with him, by the way. It's, you know, a lot of misconceptions out there.
Right.
And he was awesome, I have to say. He was really petrified. He didn't know what to do with it. He was really scared. When actually they said that you have cancer, breast cancer, he tried to make light of it.
Right.
You know.
But he was there.
He was there. He was holding my hand. He went to every single doctor with me. He went through the chemo with me, part of the radiation, because he passed away in the midst of my radiation.
So you stopped at that.
I stopped
at that point.
Yes.
Your son was very open in talking about the struggles that he had had with drugs, and that I want to ask you, did he ever talk to you about the pressures of being a young star? How that
He didn't have
attributed?
to talk to me about that, really. I mean, I was there from day one, you know, so he didn't. But, you know, aside from all of that, I know the struggles of Hollywood. He was doing fine. He was fully booked from his agent, Sterling Talent, fully booked for 2010. He was doing amazing. He was merely sick that day. He died in my arms. I wouldn't have been here today if we didn't go through our path. You know what I mean? We were supposed to obviously go through this experience to get to this point. You know, with my new grandchild being born, which is a miracle, thank God. You know, with going through my cancer, with losing my son, you know, who was my best friend in the whole wide world. You know, within 7 months, somebody's life can turn around and hit you in the face and you don't know what's going on. You know, so with all the struggles, you know, I just want to honor his memory. We're coming up on 1 year, which is March 10th. It's extremely hard to even believe that he's not here.
He said, "You guys know I don't ever say anything bad about anyone, but Judy Haim, brackets no longer her last name, is a bad woman who vehemently protects evil. She has been creating distractions and diversions since her son's death to shun away the feelings of true guilt she must bear. Hashtag blasphemy." What was your reaction to that?
So I looked at it and I said, number one, who's protecting evil?
Right.
Is it me or is it him for all these years?
What happened to Corey Haim, he told me the story. It's not my place to go out and name the name of his abuser because it didn't happen to me.
But you seem to be saying if you get the $10 million and make the movie, you will do that.
I still can't say what I didn't see.
If you can't name names, then stop talking about my kid. He never hid anything. He was Corey. It's out of character. That's number one. When my son was 13, he's not going to go and ask Charlie Sheen to go and sleep with him. I have to tell you that this guy is the guy that abused my son.
So, the question is, who did she name? So what she said there is, this guy Dominic is the guy that abused my son. My son said so. Braskia was accused of being Haim's abuser last year. At the time, he denied the allegation in an interview with Perez Hilton. "It's totally not true," he said. "I'm as shocked as anyone else, as Haim was one of my good friends. I knew him for over 25 years. He's now dead, by the way." In her interview, Judy said Haim, who struggled with drug addiction for decades before dying of pneumonia at 38 in 2010, made reference to the alleged abuse he suffered at the hands of Braskia in The Two Coreys, a reality show that chronicled his life with friend and fellow child star Corey Feldman. "He said so on The Two Coreys," said Judy. "If you ever go back and watch any interview that my son ever gave, you would understand what I'm talking about. He hid nothing." Judy said, Feldman, 46, introduced Haim to several people in Hollywood at the time, one of whom was Braskia. She claimed Braskia lived near them in Studio City, and that Haim and his friends would often visit Braskia's home to watch TV and play pool. Haim said that one day she received a call from her son yelling and screaming that Braskia allegedly wouldn't get off him. She rushed over to the apartment and alleged that when she walked in, she saw a fully dressed Braskia sitting on top of her son. Dominic was sitting on my son, pinning him to the floor, not allowing him to move, she said. I took a pool cue, and he will remember that, and I went so close to his head and I said, you better get off him or I'm going to bash your head in. And he got off him and we left. Judy alleged that Haim had been sexually abused by Braskia one other time in that apartment before, but she would not go into further detail. So that's who she named. The person that Corey Haim was accusing Feldman of being best friends with. When asked why she thinks her son never spoke about his alleged abuse, Judy said he kept it secret for so long because he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want people to think he was gay or say it was his fault. She said, he said, Mum, somebody hurt me. I don't need to hurt them back. I need to take this to my grave. Anyway, this is the reason I started seriously questioning where Corey Feldman was coming from. He was attacking a woman dying of cancer who had just lost her son and basically calling her a pedoprotector. But wait, there's more. It's like one of those cheesy TV advertisements, right? The Corey Feldman story goes on. Let's look into his side of things. A number of women have now openly accused Corey Feldman of RSA and harassment and physical assault. Although some of the allegations of abuse and questionable sexual behaviour have been circulating in social media for the past decade, they were recently exposed and vocalised by Mindy Robertson, a conservative activist, a political commentator and actress who had previously been a friend and close associate of Feldman. On June 16, 2020, Mindy Robertson published an open editorial titled Corey Feldman is an predator. Former Angels Speak Out. I think that's something to do with the name of his band. To lend weight to some of these accusations, he demanded I had to wear white if we hung out or did an event, which was weird, but whatever. Then he started demanding that I couldn't eat meat in front of him. He actually invited me to dinner, but then refused to allow me to order anything with meat because he was vegan and found it offensive, which was the last time I agreed to ever take him up on dinner. According to her, Corey Feldman not only destroyed the lives of women who were around him, he wanted to control everything, the way they dress, the things they eat, and the way they live their lives. As stated by Robinson, the icing on the cake is the drugs he lures women to do with him so that he can take advantage of the vulnerable condition and do that to them. She also mentioned in an incident where she was invited to Feldman's birthday party and upon arrival was told that she either had to pay for entry or strip down to her bra and thong. She also revealed that she later found out Feldman was having unprotected sex with women and says to have cared for one woman who was sick from the drugs and alcohol he'd given her. Mindy stated, I held her hair while she cried and threw up, while Corey stomped around angry because she wouldn't have sex with him. She says Feldman had also given the girl a bladder infection. Corey liked using his celebrity status to reel in young, usually out-of-town, naive girls, but it turns out he also convinced them that a makeup sponge dipped in questionable spermicide he bought from China would protect them from every disease in the world, including AIDS, Mindy wrote, adding, Corey Feldman is a manipulative, emotional bully and takes advantage of everyone he knows. I very well believe that he himself was a victim of SA, but that does not give him the right to do it to other women, all the while pretending to fight Hollywood predators. Make no mistake, Corey Feldman is a sexual predator of the worst kind. Conceptual, hey? I don't know about that. Mindy was not only brave enough to speak for herself, but also shared the letters of several women who said they were harassed and abused by Feldman in their career. So far, 8 women have spoken out as victims and witnesses of Corey Feldman's alleged sexual, emotional, mental, and physical abuse. Some of them work in very close proximity with Feldman, or have been a part of Feldman's former band, Corey's Angels. Mara Moon, a singer-songwriter who was part of Feldman's 2017 tour, said she was subjected to emotional abuse because she refused to acquiesce to Feldman's advances. She was forced to watch his orgies, drug use, and abusive behavior. She posts on Twitter, "I was supposed to be paid that Monday. I never got paid for one single day of work, on top of sexual harassment and hunger and RV danger. Who wants to continue working a tour, loading equipment, losing sleep? That Tuesday I quit. I was done being degraded and being used for free labor." Jacqueline von Ruden, also known as Jezebel Sweet, one of Corey Feldman's former band members from the spring and summer tours of 2017, claims that Feldman and his wife Courtney, former Canadian beach bunny spa escort, were both fond of group sex parties and often lured newcomers to participate in group sex with them. She also filed a police report on Feldman for sexual battery. "There were several times at his home or on tour where he grabbed at my butt or breasts," says Von Ruden. She also mentions a specific night when she says she witnessed Feldman sodomize an unnamed girl while his wife watched and encouraged him. "This happened while on tour in New York City. I tried to go back to the tour bus with the other girls after our show, but he yelled at me and said I had to go with him because it was his birthday. We had a party at his hotel suite. Some of the girls left, and then Corey had sex with the ones who stayed besides myself and one girl who was there with a boyfriend who only had sex with him while we watched. Eventually that couple left too. One of the other girls had told Corey earlier in the day that she was going to have anal with him as a gift for his birthday. She had never done it before, and when he told her he wanted to do it, she said no because she was scared and she had changed her mind. His wife Courtney started screaming at the girl, saying that she had to do it because she already said she would. Corey yelled at her too. The girl started crying and kept saying no, but Corey didn't care and forced himself on her. His wife was touching me and kept saying, "Isn't that so hot?" while he raped her, and I had done so much MDMA and ketamine that I was physically ill. I felt freezing cold and I couldn't move or speak. Jezebel Sweet, who is the Von Ruden woman. This is the girl who claimed I grabbed her butt once. Wrong again, Corey Feldman. Here's my police report. It does look like she filed one. According to her, Feldman somehow still managed to keep his angelic image in the eyes of the girls, which he used to calm his lust. Based on allegations made on several posts on the Dirty, Corey Feldman has been accused of similar behavior with then-boyfriend Lindsay Chemlick. Pawina Siddharth, a costume designer and musician who worked with Corey Feldman in 2016-2017, revealed that Feldman not only used women for sex, but also robbed them of their hard work. She speaks about how he used the costume she made for him without ever paying her. Notice the tiny MY above truth, because it's not the truth. It's just his delusion he made up to scam hardworking Americans out of their Corey Fraudman Wolfpack liar, out of their dollars. As long as you're listening to him and dancing on his signals, you're acceptable. But the moment you start making your own decisions, he kicks you out of his group and he uses your belongings without your permission. Feldman isn't satisfied with victim shaming. He has to post photos of a young woman coming out against him to punish her like he has threatened other girls in the past if they talk. He brags that no victims have come forward. They are terrified and traumatized, so we howl for them. She also narrated her first-hand experience and stated that all the donations which Corey collected to help him fight SA were directed to his own personal purse and to fund his needs. It's a pretty big allegation. Should be a paper trail for that. Margot Lane, music director and bandmate who worked on the spring and summer tours with Feldman, spoke of the artist's habit of slipping women unsuspecting drugs, which paints the picture of a possible sexual assault while in the state of inebriation. She also filed a complaint with the California Labor Commissioner's Office for unpaid wages and penalties and was deemed by the court to be owed over $7,000. He absolutely can't argue with that if the court ruled on it. Chantel Nippenberg calls Feldman a sexual predator, stating that she saw him being inappropriate with underage girls. During the first week of June 2020, Chantel came forward and claimed to have proof of both former child actors, Jemison Newlander, the other Frog brother in the film Lost Boy, and Corey Feldman, and showed before the band Corey's Angels was created, Feldman had attempted to launch a talent agency for young women. The first step in the audition process was for these young girls to take and send pictures of themselves for Feldman to approve before making contact with any of them. The pictures would be sent to a woman by the name of Nicole Howe, who would then decide which should be forwarded on. Chantel stated in an interview that many of the pictures that came through were disturbing to see. There are many pictures of young girls dressed in lingerie, leaving very little to the imagination. It is unclear what Feldman did with those pictures once he'd received them, but as Chantel would later go on to claim, there were instances where Corey Feldman would feed drugs to minor girls and would proceed to abuse them. She says Jemison Newlander not only knew of this happening, but has seen things for himself. He has remained silent and in full support of Feldman. Oh, here we go, some texts. I'm trying not to be afraid of you and your lap dogs anymore. I'm finding strength on the side of truth and what the world will think if I decide to full on show screenshots of tweets and DMs from you and other Feld cult people. Give me a reason to ever trust you again. Oh, wait. Maybe these will help. Corey Feldman wife swap. There's some crazy stuff in that. Hey Chantel, thanks for reaching out. It's an odd position to be in. Truthfully, I'm not really interested in being involved much more in all of this. I was trying to help set the scene with the documentary, trying to get across that Feldman, Haim and I are really very typical summer for 15, 16-year-old boys, and how amazing it was, how whatever stuff they go into later in their fame, this summer of 86 was special and very kid-like. If I had to do it over again, I would probably not get into some of those details. Those were part of the memory and can be fairly typical ways for teenage boys to act together when they hang out. I don't know what the right thing to do is. I'm not on either side, just trying to be a good friend to Feldman as he tries to get out a story that he felt was important to tell. But it's so tricky and I'm not really happy about the details they used from my talk. So I get it if you or others feel the same way. I'm ready to move on from all of this. Hope this coronavirus lockdown hasn't been too hard on you or your people. Thanks again for your perspective. I'm going to start a podcast soon and I may address this sentiment I wrote above. I'll let you know if I do. Wishing you good health during this weird times. Jemison. See, you know I wasn't lying. You are a beautiful girl. How old? 17? 16, but you were close. Yeah. There's some exchanges there that are concerning, and particularly some of these ones with the wifey. Let's have a look at them. They might be removed by now. Cut for Courtney. You are both hot, but presumably underage. So let's just say you were both cute, okay? Just resent it again. Let me know if you got it. I saw it, and though you are cute, they will not approve you with those photos. They want to see a bikini or something of that nature. Thanks, but I don't have any of those, so guess there goes my shot to hang out with you, unless you're around another time. Just take some, silly. It's not that hard. Throw on a bikini and take some photos and then send them in. You're cute. Just be confident. Well, it's starting to look a little bit damning for Mr. Feldman. What inspired you to use the name Angelic to the core? It's quite unique, and what's the thought behind it? Achieving their creative goals so they could be controlled and used for their looks and bodies. That's why they wear lingerie. Interesting. So, yeah, there is apparently Corey Feldman likes beating women up in addition to sexually assaulting them. Never witnessed him hit a woman personally, but I always wondered, since his wife mysteriously got a fat lip more than once after they'd been fighting. And another well-publicised incident dating back to 2016, 4 days before the Feldman's Bizarre Today performance. He left a disturbing angry voice message to former Angel Crystal Carley when he found out she was about to leave the so-called band. Only days following Mindy Robinson's open editorial, Corey Feldman was scheduled to be one of the panelists on the town hall meeting organised by the LA Committee on Sexual Violence, a panel that was made up of several SAG-AFTRA survivors of sexual violence. As evidence and claims kept piling up against Feldman, the event was abruptly cancelled due to allegations of sexual misconduct against one of their panelists. It has come to our attention that there have been allegations of sexual misconduct against one of our panelists. As a committee, which includes many survivors of SA, we take each accusation seriously and hold space for every voice. The question of art is a very divisive topic, and oftentimes people are drawn into two opposing lines, especially when a high-profile person believed to be championing the cause is the one accused of the same. Corey Feldman has used his Twitter handle and a handful of publications to deny every allegation against him. As the last few lines of this article were being written, a longtime friend of Corey Feldman, whose presence didn't go unnoticed at the premiere of My Truth documentary, porn star Ron Jeremy, was charged with 8 counts of sexually assaulting 4 women in incidents dating back to 2014, including all of these types of crimes. Ron Jeremy and Corey Feldman partied like it was 1985. Great documentary premiere tonight of Corey Feldman from Ron Jeremy. If convicted, he faces up to 90 years to life in prison, according to prosecutors. So, yeah, wow. Ron Jeremy. So, he's still in jail. He was indicted in 2021, I'm more than 30. Wow. Corey Feldman's not hanging out with the right people if he really does want to continue with his plight. Anyway, his claim that Marilyn Manson is completely obsessed with him is probably much like his claim that Corey Haim was his best friend. At this point, I think he's just trying to say anything he can to stay relevant. So yeah, that's that little sidetrack.